Week 14. If you play redraft fantasy football, this is probably your last attempt to make the playoffs. All my best. I hope it works out for you. But if you got nothing to play for this week, DFS is still here for you. Someone made $1 million last week on the weirdest lineup I've seen all season. We're going to start the show talking about that. Let's get into it. What is up? Welcome to the DFS Academy, Club Fantasy's weekly DFS show for week 14. I am your host, Ryan Weiss. With me, as always, Austin Amendolia with another different background.
Yeah, it's been a season of travel for me. And so I've been all over the place. Actually, this is the second time I've been to DC in the past month. So it keeps coming. And you know what? There will probably be a different background next week.
There you go. I love that. We don't talk about it much on this show, and I do not encourage anyone to go seek it out, but I do a very small podcast for my home league where me and a good friend of mine just kind of break down the matchups and make fun of everybody's teams. Through 3 weeks, he had sat at a different location in his house. And so then he made it his goal to sit in a different location every single week this season. He's a school principal, so he did one from his office when the school was closed. Like, he just kept going to like different places, and that's been fun. So now you're bringing a little bit of that into the show. It's Dan, by the way. You've done shows with him when we've done the mock draft, so it's been interesting. Like I said, don't go seek it out. It's not entertaining if you're not in my league at all, but it is what it is. It's week 14, Austin. As I mentioned, the wire for a lot of fantasy football seasons, but this is also a time where we see a vast uptick in interest in DFS because, let's be honest, 8 of 14 teams or 6 of 12 teams are done with fantasy football after this week.
Yeah, it's the time of year to be pivoting. Hopefully you've been here from the beginning and are still using up your bankroll this year. But if you're just not starting, welcome. The water's nice.
Yeah. And sometimes it gets weird. It's honestly been weird, but different weird for each of the last 4 weeks. So let's get into that. First and foremost, thank you for watching. If you'd like to watch again next week, we do the show. We pre-record the show, but it goes live for you folks every Friday morning. You can hit that follow button. You can hit the subscribe button if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. As I mentioned, the follow button. Drop comments, ask questions. If you want to ask questions after the show is over, Austin, let them know about the Discord that we have here at Club Fantasy.
Yeah, we have a listener Discord that you can join by following the link in the show description. We talk all sorts of formats of fantasy football, but most importantly, we talk about DFS. I like to drop DFS lineups in there, especially ahead of the main slate, talk about what cash lineup I have landed on. Oftentimes that is very helpful. Sometimes it is not. This week it was helpful. And also we get to answer any questions. And if you win big, or even if you win small and you drop it in there, we would talk about it on the show. That's one of the great things about it. We get to celebrate our wins together and help make each other better at DFS.
Absolutely. And we don't just talk DFS. We actually play it with our listeners as well. We have contests going on FanDuel and DraftKings, $2 contest. You'll get to win a little bit of money from us. You'll also get your name announced at the end of the show as the winner. A very familiar name this week, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. We always start this show with what we call answers to the test. A big part of this show is going to be Austin's cash plays, but we like to start it off with GPP because it's fun and someone won $1 million last week. Austin, the lineup jumped out at me right away. So I'll just read the lineup off. Jacoby Brissett, Kamani Vidal, Bijan Robinson, Nico Collins, Tedoroa McMillan, Adonai Mitchell, Dalton Schultz, Brock Bowers, Seattle defense and special teams. That lineup scored 205 points, Austin, which is not the lowest we've seen this season, but it is probably the lowest we've seen in a month. What jumped out at me, no stack with Jacoby Brissett, just a fully, for the term that everyone uses, a fully naked Jacoby Brissett. No game stack, no player stacks, nothing. They run 2 Texans out there, but didn't run CJ Stroud. They seem to have focused on the Chargers in Vegas and the Atlanta and Jets game, couple of game stacks there. And Austin, it's a 2 tight end Millie maker, which I believe is only the second time we've seen that this season. So it was a weird lineup. It got you a weird score. And as you go from this lineup to your cash lineup, things were kind of weird in cash this week too. So
yeah, things were super weird this past week. I mean, it's funny coming off of week 12 where the chalk hit super hard. The Millie making winning lineup was 260 points. It seemed like it was, bound to happen that we would just bounce back the other way. I didn't quite expect it to go this much in the other direction.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine this lineup, that the score of this lineup, take away the players, the outcome, the score of 200 points, won $1 million, someone $1 million in week 13.
It didn't.
They wouldn't have even cashed in week 12.
Yeah. And that's where we got super mad. Austin, I don't know this person. I didn't put their name in. I never put their name in. I would be willing to bet against their $1 million that they used a lineup optimizer. I would almost be willing to guess on how they used the lineup optimizer. And that is that they put in Bijan Robinson and the Seattle defense and special teams, and then let the lineup optimizer finish the rest, because Seattle was a more expensive play. So you kind of had to like be weird about Seattle, but it gave you the classic 2 tight end set. It's funny in the fantasy industry and in the writing industry in general, you can tell when AI is used because there's a lot of M dashes and things like that. The new giveaway for me, Austin, if I see 2 tight ends, I know you used an optimizer.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I mean, also just like,
clear, I don't want to make this sound like I'm being a dick about this. Use optimizers, use whatever resources you have. It's just like I said, this lineup makes no sense. And do you know who builds lineups who doesn't make any sense? Optimizers.
yeah, like I think the thing that really gets me about this lineup is it is just like breaking one of the fundamental rules of tournaments and playing Jacoby Brissett of all people without a stack. Like,
yep,
you can get away with that when it's Lamar Jackson, when it's Josh Allen, and you're like, you know what? They could score 3 rushing touchdowns and none of their pass catchers get there. Jalen Hurts, another great example. Jacoby Brissett ain't running the ball. And so the fact that you had an optimal lineup with Jacoby Brissett and no stacks is wild to me. But the thing, and this will just transition right into cash, the thing that worked out for this player who won the Million Maker last week is the cash flopped last week.
Yep.
I mean, it was a ugly week for cash. When we were coming off of week 12, you had to score 196 points to have cashed. This past week, I cashed with a lineup that hit 115 points.
Yep, me too. I'm guessing our lineups were similar, but yeah, I do the $10 double up every week, and mine was, I think, 115 as well.
Yeah, and the cut line essentially for cash contest last week was 103. Like, I'm telling you, if you just told me going into any given week, Austin, you're going to score 115 points with your cash lineup, I'm going to say, oh, that's bad. Yep. I'm screwed. And yet it worked out this week.
So Austin, I changed my strategy this week a little bit. I have come to the realization that the Millie Maker is a pie in the sky. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. My bankroll doesn't sustain me just donating $20 every single week. And so I started thinking about what I wanted to do. And honestly, our conversations mold me. It takes a little while to get through my thick skull sometimes. But the way I build lineups, Austin, single entry contests are better for me. And so because I did the $10 double up, I went and searched out, and DraftKings had 3 single entry $3 tournaments. So in the highest payout, I put my very first lineup. And then there were certain things I wanted to tweak. I think it was the running back, so I made that the middle payout. And then I wanted to mess around with the defense a little bit, and I made that the lowest payout. And I cashed in the $10 double up, and I cashed in the big tournament. So
there you go. And honestly, that's a very similar way that I play with my bankroll. I will play a double up. I'll play some head-to-heads, but then with my little segment that's in tournament contest, I'm doing pretty much exclusively single entry contest. I'll do some of the hundos, and I'll have one that's a larger contest. So it's like if I win, I turn my dollar into $1,000.
Yep.
And it's a fine way to play. And also, like, in those smaller tournaments, you're more likely to end up paying out and continue to build positive. So it's similar to the cash mindset. You're building your bankroll, and my goal is that, like, by the end of the year, I'm set up for like the Super Bowl, maybe a time in the playoffs, to then enter a Million Maker lineup for the fun of it and to kind of build up to that over time. And so it's definitely like those smaller contests, tournament contests are a really great way, especially the single entry ones are a really great way to increase your chances of taking down a tournament.
Yeah, and I think what I look forward to, like maybe the special occasions like Thanksgiving, where they give us the $5 entries to try to win $1 million, and I'll have fun with it during that week. But I just need to be more conscientious when it comes to my bankroll. Gamble responsibly, folks. Austin, let's wrap up that section. Move into week 14. We start the show with cash. Austin's specialty. Let's build those bankrolls so that you can enter the Millie Making contest. Austin, we get it started with top of the class. This is the expensive player for the week, $8,000 or more over on DraftKings. You got one for us this week.
Yes, I do. I managed to get somebody in my lineup, and it is a guy that was very popular last week, Devon Achane. He is priced up this week. He's up to $8,800 on DraftKings, $9,200 on FanDuel. So he's really getting on up there. He was 80% rostered in cash contests last week, or in the $10 double up that I played. And so it's one of those situations like when he's being played that often, like it kind of doesn't matter how he performs. Like he only quote unquote scored 22 fantasy points on DraftKings at $8,300. That's almost paying off. That's almost 3xing his salary. So it was fine. But it wasn't like he broke the slate or anything, but still he was a key piece you needed. I think it's going to be a similar situation this week. We've talked a lot about Devon Achane and his role and the fact that he is heavily utilized in the pass game, and that ends up being a big aspect of his role and creating stability on that front. So I'm looking to go back to him once again.
Yeah, I like Achane a lot this week. He happens to be my 2 touchdown prediction, which means he's jinxed and he's going to blow the entire slate up. But as Austin pointed out, doesn't really matter when he's rostered in 80% of teams. Everybody takes that dud. But one of the things I did like about him this week, Austin, is that you've already mentioned he gets it done through the air as well as rushing. The Jets also give up touchdowns in both of those forms to running backs. So it's really a perfect kind of storm for Devon Achane to come into this game and kind of tear the lid off the place. So,
yeah, exactly. And it's been just a really good it's a really good matchup over the past 4 weeks. The Jets have allowed nearly 30 points per game to running backs since week 10. So we love that for the spot that Achane's in.
There you go. That's our high price play on the week. We move on to what we call the band nerds. You're good students, but a little bit too much time on those instruments. They can't be top of the class. That is, of course, the mid-tier players, $6,000 to $8,000. And Austin, you got a little bit of, well, I was going to say a little bit of everything, but it's really just a quarterback and 2 more running backs for us.
Yeah, I mean, so I wanted to give an option to pay up at quarterback this week. I don't know that I'm going to do that. There's a couple of options where I think you can save money this week that I am more intrigued by, but Daniel Jones going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, it feels like a pretty decent setup for him. Like the Jaguars defense hasn't been that great. They also haven't been like super easy and soft against opposing offenses. So I don't know that it's like necessarily a smash lineup, but his role, the way he's been working in this offense has been consistent. And while it has turned down in recent weeks, I feel like he's going to be able to perform super well. And in particular, the reason I was interested.
Did I lose you, Austin? Austin, your audio went out after you said the reason I was interested. There you go.
The reason I was interested in Daniel Jones this week is because Jacksonville is pretty good against running backs. And so it might be a tougher week for Jonathan Taylor, which then lends itself to Daniel Jones. I mean, throw the ball more and having more action that way. And so I'm kind of betting on that a little bit, but it's to say that if you are paying up for quarterback this week, Daniel Jones is the guy I like the most in this price range, but I'm probably saving and with a couple of options I will talk about in a second.
Yeah, I think Jones is a fine play for cash. I'm not touching him in tournaments, Austin, since and obviously it's since he broke his leg, and we just recently found out that he has just stopped running the ball, and that was something that really made him valuable earlier in the season. And right now, I mean, he's still out there tossing 2 touchdown passes every game, so I'm not knocking him as a cash play at all. I'm just very concerned about his upside, and I'm kind of with you. I get why you want to give everyone an option. I'm not paying up for Daniel Jones. So.
That is very fair. Yeah, I don't think I will actually play him in cash, but again, like if you end up having like extra roster and you're like, I want to pay up at quarterback, to me, he's a fine direction to go.
I kind of joked it's turned him into what Aaron Rodgers was earlier in the season, just a statue back there who tosses 200 yards and 2 touchdowns every week. Like You can do worse. Don't get me wrong. You can do far, far worse. And then Austin, you got 2 more running backs to go with Devon Achane.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Chase Brown and Quinshon Judkins this week. Both being really heavily utilized, and both have good matchups. Cincinnati going up against the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's been allowing the third most points to the running back position over the past 4 weeks. So again, smash spot for Chase Brown, and he's been getting really good volume. Even with Joe Burrow back in the lineup, you'd be afraid that he took a dip. Nope, he gets 7 catches on 7 targets. So that's really, really nice for him. Interestingly, there's this funny thing where it's like the Tennessee Titans have been really good against running backs, but I kind of don't buy it to some degree. And also, Quinshon Judkins, like he's getting there on volume and overall usage. Now, again, like this is another situation where I'm giving you options, and I think Judkins is a fine play. But for me, like I'm playing Devon Achane, I'm playing Chase Brown right now. And I feel like that's going to be a very popular pairing. So I don't think you necessarily need Judkins, but he is a little bit cheaper than Chase Brown. But if he's averaging 20 touches per game, like that's really solid volume for a guy that's priced at $6,400.
Couldn't agree more. Love Quinshon Judkins this week. I think I fit him into my lineup against you for later on in the show. Just like you said, the Titans have been good against running backs, but when you look at some of the people they've played and some of the way the games have shaken out, have they really? And so you just have a feeling that Quinshon Judkins could easily go off. And I want to talk about some other aspects of this game, which we'll actually get to in the next section. So we get into the bookworms. These are your value plays, $4,000 to $6,000, easily underestimated. And Austin, I'm going to let you get started with the 2 quarterbacks you want to talk about, and then I want to just throw a little game theory at you.
Yeah, so I'm looking at both Tyrod Taylor and Marcus Mariota this week in this price range. They're both cheap. Now, of course, on the Washington side, we gotta monitor if Jaden Daniels does play, which it seems like he's trending towards playing.
Yeah, practice today. We record the show on Thursday. He did practice on Thursday.
So again, this is like if Jaden Daniels takes a downturn, then you can play Mariota, but I think you can play Tyrod Taylor regardless. Taylor is $4,900 on DraftKings, $6,700 on FanDuel. Going up against the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have been being beat by opposing quarterbacks. It's not necessarily like, oh, this is the best matchup in the league, but they are allowing the 5th most points to the position since week 10. And importantly, Tyrod Taylor we saw last week he was able to put up over 20 points in a game against Atlanta. I think Miami is kind of on par defensively as Atlanta. And the fact that he's also getting it done with his legs still really huge. And at 4,900, like 20 points is doing really good if you're at 4,900. We really need just 15 points from Tyrod Taylor, which is going to help us pay up for guys like Devon Achane and the rest of our lineup.
Which perfectly leads into the guy I wanted to ask about. Austin, we have not talked about Shedeur Sanders on this show, possibly ever, if I had to guess.
That is correct.
And there's a reason for that. But Austin, as you brought up, Tennessee has not been as good as some of the numbers would lead them to look. And I looked, and they've given up I think it was the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks over the last 4 games. Shedeur Sanders has not been great. I don't want to get it twisted that I'm out here trying to tell people he's been good. But he's been at about 11 fantasy points in each of his first 2 starts. And this is from a train wreck of a Cleveland organization that was not even allowing him to practice, from what I understood, with the first or second team. He is now obviously doing that. He's practicing with the first team. There's a lot of turmoil in this overall situation. But Austin, the last part I wanted to bring up here is, while they weren't like the number 1, number 2 rivalry that we've seen before, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward were together every day during the draft process. And I believe this is going to be a game where both of them are going to want to show out. And I think at $4,400 on DraftKings, Austin, you could do worse than Shedeur Sanders because of what he does for the rest of your lineup. But if he gets you 10 points, you're not going to be very happy about it.
I was going to say, I think you are bringing up this player in the wrong portion of the show, because I see.
Think he's a GPP play?
if he's anything, he's a GPP play. He's not going to be a cash play.
Oh God, I see no ceiling. There's zero chance I'm playing him in GPPs.
I also see no floor. So it's like
he scored 10 points in both of his weeks. I know that shit. But you just said if old boy gets you 16 or 17 to Rod Taylor, you're happy with it. If Shadur Sanders throws one more touchdown, he's more viable. And I don't know. I'm not going to play it, Austin. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to play it. I just wanted to have it on this show. So when I come back next week and he's a 20-point play, I can be like, see, I didn't play it.
if he's a 20-point play, he probably helped you win a tournament.
Yeah,
with
that's true. That's a really good point.
But like
I don't
from
know.
the football take perspective, the reason I'm like I can't get there with him is I do think as shaky as Tennessee's defense has been, they can get after the quarterback. And he has a tendency to invite sacks. And that's just a bad recipe for a quarterback to be successful in general. So that is really what scares me off of him, like that's actual take stance. Now, if he had already shown me a 15-point performance, then I'd be like, okay, maybe. But it's just, if he scores me 10 points, I feel like I'm going to get buried by guys like Tyrod Taylor, and that's the other thing too. He's not that much cheaper than Tyrod Taylor.
And that I'll give you, yeah.
He's like, what, $600 cheaper than Taylor?
500, I think, than Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, 500. So it's not like I'm like getting a massive saving. Now, if Tyrod Taylor was at 5,400 or 5,600, and Shadur Sanders was all the way down at 4K, the bare minimum for quarterbacks, then I might like say, okay, there's a world where I want that because I want to be able to get both JSN and Devon Achane, but it's just the salary is not quite there yet for me to do that.
Completely fair. And Austin already knows this, but I like to make sure you guys all understand my thought process. I talked myself out of this as soon as I talked myself into it. Austin gave me a little extra time to prep tonight, and I was looking in the over-unders for the week. And the Cleveland-Tennessee game is a full 7 points lower than the next lowest game. So the highest game of the week is going on as we speak. It's Dallas and Detroit at 55 points based on the source that I use. Cleveland is 33.5, 22 points lower than the highest game. And the next game up, so worst game, Cleveland. Next game up, 40.5. 7 points, Austin. You can't put, if you're doing anything other than running back, you are bucking all theory at this point. So
yeah, nope, that's very true.
Defense, I guess that defense as well. I did say, and I'll end this discussion on this terrible game with this. I did say these are two NFL teams. Austin rolled his eyes when I said that. I'm betting the over. Like, they're going to score 34 points. That's just me. Don't take your advice from me. I burn money. Austin, you've already given us so many running backs, so it makes sense that you only have one here in this category.
Yeah. So here I have Devin Neal. We went to him last week because he was fairly cheap from a salary perspective.
Yeah.
I'm really willing to go back there. I was kind of surprised he wasn't actually played that much this past week. But I think he's a fine option to go after. Maybe if you want to do a 3 running back build and play Chase Brown, Devon Achane, and Devin Neal, I feel comfortable with that. Like, he was utilized heavily enough. Obviously, it becomes a different story if Alvin Kamara is made active before this game, but I kind of expect Neal to continue being the lead running back. And so, getting 15, 20 touches, I feel really comfortable just running it back with them. And in Tampa Bay, like, for those of us that have played redraft fantasy for a long time, know and believe, don't play your running backs against Tampa Bay, because they had a trend there for a while where they just shut them down, like would not allow 100+ yard games to opposing running backs. And that hasn't really been the case this year. They've been, especially in recent weeks, a little bit soft on opposing running backs. So I think it's a good setup for Devin Neal.
Yep. Nothing to add there. Let's go ahead and move on to the wide receivers.
Yeah, so I have 3 here, all high volume. First off, Adonai Mitchell at $4,600 on DraftKings. He, like, all of a sudden, I guess, got out of Indianapolis, and people said, "Oh yeah, we know we like this kid. Let's throw him the ball." I guess it's so funny how people like leave teams, and it's like, yeah, now we know how to use this guy, and it's like, what were you doing in Indianapolis? Like,
exactly.
Clearly, you could have given him targets, but whatever. We'll see if he actually pans out. But for right now, he's definitely cash viable at $4,600. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the bottom kind of fell out a little bit of the Arizona Cardinals offensive attack last week, in terms of we had multiple weeks in a row where we were double stacking Jacoby Brissett with Trey McBride and Michael Wilson in cash, and it was working. That's not working anymore.
No.
They're too priced up. Trey McBride has now hit 8K on DraftKings, but Marvin Harrison in his first game back with Jacoby Brissett got a ton of target volume, and I really like that going into this week. So I'm looking to go back his direction. And then similar note in terms of volume, Jacoby Myers did not miss a beat in terms of volume with the return of Brian Thomas Jr., which I think creates some interesting pivot points in tournaments. But for cash, I'm like, okay, Jacoby Myers is like the Jacoby Myers of old, where he's getting all of the targets again. And I'm here for it.
That, Austin. Yeah, the beginning of the season, after about week 4, I think I kind of yelled at you for continually putting Jacoby Myers on your list. I'm like, it's not happening, bro, when he was with the Raiders. This is what you were expecting. And honestly, Josh and I have spent a lot of time talking about this week on our other shows. This offense is a derivative of what we saw from Tampa Bay last year. And we wanted Travis Hunter to be in the Chris Godwin role. Travis Hunter's not playing right now. He's hurt. He's out for the season. Jacoby Myers has taken that role, and he is thriving. Jacoby Myers is like a staple for my cash lineups moving forward. So
yeah, no, I love it. I mean, until they price him up into the Chris Olave range of pricing, I'm definitely going after him.
And Austin, you and I noticed the very same thing. I think a lot of fantasy people are going to notice the very same thing, is that our swear baby Trey McBride is far too expensive now. He has officially reached Travis Kelce heights, and it is and time to pivot. And what a week to pivot to a player who has just an excellent matchup.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways I think you can pivot. I mean, I will just go ahead and shout out Brock Bowers. That one I'm a little nervous about, because while Denver has been giving it up against tight ends recently, we know Pat Surtain and Riley Moss, they can cook it up. So I prefer to pivot with Tyler Warren, who goes up against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. The Jaguars have been allowing just over 15 points per game over the past 4 weeks to the tight end position. But Tyler Warren at 5K on DraftKings right now, we've seen him be able to pump in the volume, and I think it's going to set up to be a good situation. As I mentioned earlier, Jacksonville is pretty tough against running backs right now, and so Daniel Jones is going to need to throw the ball. He's probably not going to be, if playing through injury, it's probably going to be harder for him to throw it downfield, and I think that bodes well for a tight end in this situation.
Yep, and then there are things that Tyler Warren does at tight end that no other tight end in the league does. There was a play last week. They tried to run I don't want to call it a wildcat, but they brought Warren in motion and then tried to snap the ball to him to run the ball into the end zone. It went terribly. The ball slipped through his hands. Nothing worked the way it was supposed to work. But the fact that they're willing to try stuff like this, Austin, Tyler Warren, and you've already said this, Jacksonville is tough against running backs. That is going to lead to some creativity. And if your running back can't get into the end zone, your next likely culprit is your tight end. And I love that for Tyler Warren this week.
Yeah, I think it's a really good setup for him, which also makes me very intrigued by him in tournament settings, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, that makes 2 of us. So let's wrap up cash with C's Get Degrees, my favorite category, the punt plays of the week. Austin, you got a wide receiver that I think everyone needs to be very aware of, and then you're going to give us a couple of defensive options.
Yeah, I was very surprised to be throwing in this receiver to this, but yeah, he's getting the volume. So Devon Vele, $3,700 on DraftKings. When I tell you, it feels like it has been ages since I have been able to pay less than 4K for a receiver and feel good about it. It feels so good to be back on this front.
Yeah.
The past 2 weeks, Vele has 7 and 8 targets. Tyler Shuck is getting him the ball, and at 3,700, he doesn't have to do that much. And so I would just take the volume, be happy about it, move on from there. The other thing, just a note on this. So a lot of people I think will know Vele from his days in Denver. He is now with the New Orleans Saints, who is playing Tampa Bay this weekend. The Buccaneers have allowed the fourth most points to receivers since week 10. So they've also been really leaky against receivers, which bodes well again for Devon Bailey.
No notes. That was exactly what I was going to add. So let's talk about these defenses.
Perfect. So the two defenses I am intrigued by this week for cash, which the caveat always being that defense doesn't really matter in cash, but I think you can go with the Tennessee Titans. Again, who are going up against the Cleveland Browns. This is me being a little bit of a hater, but I said it earlier. Like, should Sanders?
You're not wrong. Like I said,
He takes sacks. Like,
yeah,
he could be a successful NFL quarterback. I'm not that kind of hater when it comes to Sanders. He just takes sacks, and he's a rookie quarterback. And rookie quarterbacks are known to throw interceptions because they got to learn somehow. They got to make the mistakes. Exactly. And so it just sets up to be a good spot. I also just don't trust the Cleveland Browns offensive line that much in the pass protection game. So I think there's a chance for them to have a good ceiling there. The other option that I like is the Washington Commanders. And this is particularly if JJ McCarthy does not play, but also if JJ McCarthy does not play, then I'm still fine going to the Commanders. Just I think it's a situation where they have a relatively safe floor in this matchup, and I think they'll have good upside. The one issue that I think that the one concern I have about it is they will give up points to running backs, and so I could see that causing some issues. But for your defense, like I don't think you're going to have Minnesota running the ball for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and like making the Commanders have negative defensive points. Like that's would be outlandish.
Well, and it helps out that Aaron Jones is coming into this with a shoulder injury if he plays at all. So they may only have Jordan Mason, and that's going to limit how much they can do at the running back spot. So
yeah, there you go.
Now, I like that pick. I just want to quickly add, if you followed along last week, Carolina Panthers were the number 5 defense on the week and scored a touchdown last week. Just saying, cheapest defense. Way to go in cash. I'm not saying Austins are wrong. I'm just saying if you want to save some money, Las Vegas Raiders. And if you want to give that strategy a try, we do have tournaments going on DraftKings and FanDuel. Jump in, $2 to enter with us. And again, we announce the winner at the end of every show. We'll get that in here after this next segment, which is where we talk about our favorite tournament plays of the week. And I'll chime in a little bit more here. Austin is going to give you enough players that you can build just an Austin lineup. And then I'll give you some kind of contrarian picks, if you will. So Austin, get us started with quarterback.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about this is earlier in the show, you were like, I would not play Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. So me and Austin usually play very nice with one another. I did not know you had Daniel Jones as your tournament pick. And I'm going to be honest, Austin, I hate it, and you're not going to talk me into it. So.
That's fair.
Maybe there's somebody out there who you can talk into it. So.
Let me talk you through my thought process a little bit. Here's the thing. Okay. Cincinnati, Buffalo, highest over under in the slate.
Everyone's buying in on that. So.
I don't need to tell you that Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are good plays. Like they are good plays. Stack them in creative ways. The next 2 highest over unders on the slate are the Arizona Los Angeles Rams game. I'm sort of intrigued by that. I don't think Matthew Stafford has a ton of upside. Jacoby Brissett, I think he has more. I wouldn't say upside, but like he could do what he did last week. But again, like last week, he scored you 20 points and won the Millie Maker in a weird week. So I don't feel super excited about that. I feel very intrigued by the Indianapolis-Jacksonville Jaguars game as a good game to attack to get off of those other 2 games that I think might be more popular. And I was going through and I was trying to decide, am I starting Trevor Lawrence or am I starting Daniel Jones? And I frankly, have not paid as much attention to the injury report, but I was like, between those 2, I kind of want to go with Daniel Jones because he has the rushing upside now. The injury is going to cause some issues there, but
he just won't run the ball anymore. It's killing me.
Yeah. And so it's really to say, like, I'm interested in attacking both of these games, but even if Daniel Jones is able to throw for 200, 300 yards and score 3 passing touchdowns, I think it's an interesting route to go because people aren't going to want to play him. I'm fine playing other quarterbacks too. I wanted to think of a way to attack this game and to stack up some of the players in this matchup.
Yep, I'm going with a December legend. He played 10 days ago, so people may have forgotten. I'm going with Jordan Love, who happens to be cheaper than Daniel Jones on both platforms. He's affordable, and Chicago is bad against quarterbacks. That's my big thing. Obviously, you need to pay attention to weather when it comes to these games. However, Jordan Love has been playing in weather. I'm not overly concerned. You obviously pay attention to wind for any quarterback. But if we're dealing with snow or a little precipitation, I'm not worried for Jordan Love. But most importantly, Austin, it's Toyotathon. I don't know what it is. I've tried to research like it was Toyota a sponsor of his, but whatever it is, the second it is the holiday season and Toyota starts their campaign and it rolls over to December, Jordan Love becomes the best quarterback in the NFL with like a 91 quarterback rating. Like the guy's a beast. He threw 4 touchdowns on Thanksgiving. He gets a defense that is bleeding points to quarterbacks, or at least they've gotten a little better recently, but they were at one point, and I think they can again. I like Jordan Love this week as a high upside guy who I don't have to pay a ton for, Austin. I paid up for Josh Allen last week. Didn't quite work out for me, but with Jordan Love, I get that guy kind of at the mid tier. I get multiple stacking options. Probably not a game stack. Actually, though, you could go with either Bears running back because they just seem to be going for 100 yards on a weekly basis. I think Jordan Love presents some interesting lineup building possibilities.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that because the other thing that I've been trying to sort through when I'm looking at this week is which of these, I mean, relatively low over under total games am I willing to attack in this position? Because outside of those 3 contests that I alluded to earlier, every other game has an over under below 45 points, and most of them are below 43 points. And so, to me, like it doesn't pass the gut check that there's going to be that none of those games are going to hit the over. Like some of those games are going to hit the over, and so being able to figure out which ones you think will. I think is a good route to go. The only reason I didn't go the Green Bay Chicago Bears route in this is because I was like, well, these defenses have been kind of tough and they've been playing slow.
True.
But I love the Jordan Love pick.
Yeah, you just gotta hope you are right about the slow, and then if weather gets in there, it changes things up a bit. But like I said, I do like the guy this week. Austin, we move on to the running backs. You got 3 options for us.
Yeah, so at the running back position, I first off wanted to go with Chase Brown for the Cincinnati Bengals. I mentioned him earlier, talked about the situation that he's in. It's really just continuing to buy into that and say not only does he have safe floor for a cash contest, but he's got the upside, the ceiling upside. And basically like what I'm betting on too is that people are going to be excited. Joe Burrow's back. He beat the Ravens on Thanksgiving Day. Let's stack him up. Time for my Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins stack that I have been dying to play since week 1. And what if Chase Brown just runs all over the Bills and that's how they win this game?
Yeah, it's such an excellent point. I have a similar theory with the wide receiver I'm going to talk about, though. Hopefully it's not a complete Chase Brown game.
Yeah, well, that's fair. On the other side of that Indianapolis-Jacksonville game I alluded to earlier, I'm very intrigued by going with Travis Etienne at the running back position. There are different ways that I am willing to kind of correlate this matchup where I feel comfortable playing Indianapolis pass catchers and Brenton Strange on the comeback. I'm comfortable with saying that Jonathan Taylor does pop off this game, even though the Jags have been good against running backs lately, and then bringing it back with Jacksonville receivers on the other side. So there are many different ways you can go after this, but one of the ways I like it is having Travis Etienne involved because Indianapolis has been giving it up against running backs over the past 4 weeks. Since week 10, they have allowed the 10th most points to the position, which is just over 26. It's almost 27 points per game over that span. It's a really tight group between the Eagles at 7 and the Raiders at 12th, who have all allowed about 26, 27 points over the past 4 weeks to the position. So it's a good matchup for Travis Etienne, and I like it from that perspective. And it gives you that game correlation with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And one more back for us.
Yeah, so one of my favorite guys to go after this week is Kenneth Walker, going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who, again, they're in that same cluster that Indianapolis is in terms of giving up points to the running back. And The Seahawks are 7-point favorites in this matchup. I'm pretty sure the game is in Seattle, which is not a good situation for Atlanta. I'm afraid for what is going to happen on Sunday as a Falcons fan. So I imagine that Kenneth Walker is going to be able to run all over the Falcons defense. We've seen them give it up to running backs and give it up big. They can give up explosive plays, which Kenneth Walker is definitely capable of breaking. So I like going back to him this week. He continues to be really cheap too, because he just has not had that ceiling game yet. And I'm like, the pricing to me does just not appropriately reflect the upside at $5,600 on DraftKings. Like he can far and away outperform that.
I love that. You're right. He's so talented. You know the pop game's coming to make you feel a little bit better. The game is in Atlanta, so it's not in Seattle. But that's also an indoor game for Kenneth Walker and could play out really well for him. But what I love about the Seattle running back situation, though it'd be nice if one of them went away, is Seattle's defense just keeps putting them in spots where they don't have to throw the ball. And so from a pure volume standpoint, eventually one of these guys is going to pop. And I'm a big Kenneth Walker guy. I think it's going to be him.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure that defense is about to light up Kirk Cousins this week.
Exactly. Yeah, let's not forget who the quarterback of the Falcons is. For my running back pick, Austin, I'm going with a more obvious pick. And that's going to be James Cook. And not only is he obvious, he's expensive, but all of that makes sense. This is the game everybody wants to be in on. But if people focus on the passing side of things, Austin, we've talked about this on the show a lot, and that's that Cincinnati's defense is bad at everything. And yes, they've improved recently, but they're still bad at everything. And what that means for me, Austin, is who's going to take advantage? Well, at tight end, Buffalo doesn't have someone who's going to take advantage. Dalton Kincaid's been on and off the injury report and is just a perpetual disappointment. Khalil Shakir is kind of the same thing. He's great for PPR, and I would consider Khalil Shakir for cash. I just don't know that he has the upside. James Cook can take advantage of Cincinnati's porous running defense, and that's what I'm looking for, is just multiple touchdown upside, Austin, and I think James Cook can give us that against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, well, and it's a very similar argument that I had to Chase Brown in this matchup is 100%. That you have Josh Allen, you have Joe Burrow, play the pass catchers. That's what people are going to want to do. James Cook and Chase Brown could run this game on either side of the ball. And when I originally wrote my note for this, I had Chase Brown or James Cook as my pick of attacking this matchup. And I was just like, oh, well, Ryan wants to talk about James Cook. So you go for it, because I think it's a great pick. I think it's a great week to pay up for James Cook.
Yep. And what I like is just using the show as your roadmap. You've given me so many other cheaper options I can use at running back that I can pair James Cook with a cheaper running back. And if we were talking cash, it'd be great to pair him with like Devin Neal, where I'm going to get the huge upside of James Cook with a very safe floor, and then the also safe floor of Devin Neal at that salary. So there's some really interesting things you can do with him in that game. Austin, your wide receivers are going to raise some eyebrows. But again, that's kind of what tournament play is all about, is you're trying to find the guys who nobody else is going to play. But my goodness, you have a bucket of disappointment in recent weeks here.
Yeah, I got really I don't know. I had a tough time with this slate, frankly. So I do think it is a tricky slate for the position. Now, of course, there's a lot of players that I'm not going to name that are like obvious tournament plays, like Jamar Chase in that Buffalo matchup. Of course, you should play him. There are players in that Green Bay Chicago matchup that are worth playing. But I was trying to identify a group of players that I thought had good upside, but might be able to get different. And so I'm coming back to that Jacksonville Indianapolis game, and the two guys that I'm looking at there are both Michael Pittman and Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, Brian
Thomas Jr. The thinking is simple. Like, Jacoby Myers is going to continue to be the most popular receiver in that matchup, and I'm looking for opportunities to be able to pivot off of him. Maybe that's better to do that with Brenton Strange this week, because we're not going to talk about him when we get to tight end. So that's an option for you.
Yeah,
but I'm waiting for this offense to start to reutilize Brian Thomas Jr. the way that they intended to use him, and they did use him towards the end of the year last year. And I'm betting on that one of these weeks, essentially, that having Jacoby Myers there is going to enable them to put Brian Thomas Jr. in better situations. If it doesn't happen this week, I'm probably going to be off of it, frankly. But I think it's a good situation going up against the Indianapolis Colts. especially if there's no Sauce Gardner in this matchup this week. It would set up even better for Brian Thomas Jr., but I'm continuing to kind of bet on it. And then Michael Pittman, he usually is getting really good volume. He's had some down weeks, but like there's also part of me that's like, yeah, well, we also haven't had that like 20+ point week from Michael Pittman that we know he's capable of and expect from him. So I feel like now is a good time to go after him as well, especially if you buy in on the Indianapolis Colts pass catcher side. It's a nice time to stack with Michael Pittman.
Yeah, I like that. And the Brian Thomas Jr. thing, like you just feel like he's so talented that this has got to break at some point. And I'm with you on that one. I'll be real interested to see how that one shakes out.
Yeah. Another player, I guess, in the similar vein, Troy Franklin, like he was starting to gain some momentum and then
the world fell in love and then he fell apart.
Yeah, it was very disappointing for me, especially as somebody who has shares of him in Dynasty. But at $5,500, I mean, he's still really cheap, and it's a good situation for Denver this week. Going up against the New Orleans Saints. The
Las Vegas Raiders.
The Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have allowed the 10th most points to the receiver position over the past 4 weeks. It's also one of those situations where I'm like, I feel like the volume is going to kind of turn around. I feel like he's still getting utilized fairly heavily. And so I wanted to find a way to go after this game. This is another one of those game environments where I'm like, I could see this going a different direction than what we typically would because it's a divisional matchup. Sometimes these games get weird. And so I was thinking, okay, what if this ends up being a little bit more back and forth? It's not the best total line, but Denver's favored on it. They have an implied team total of 24 points. So I like going that route, and I feel like they're going to continue using Troy Franklin. He's going to get overlooked this week.
Yep. And speaking of, maybe not speaking of overlooked, but Emeka Egbuka, man, we had such high hopes.
Yeah. So this is what I was actually trying to get to when I started referencing the New Orleans Saints. I was looking ahead to this game where Emeka Egbuka is going up against the New Orleans Saints, and frankly, like it looks like a really awful matchup for him right now because over the past 4 weeks, the New Orleans Saints have only allowed an average of 22 points per game to the wide receiver position. That's not great, but no. I kind of don't care because I'm like, it's a similar thing that I feel with Brian Thomas Jr. right now where I'm like, Baker Mayfield in this offense, it's got to click at some point, right? Like I am a little bit suspicious that we're going to just continue to have like lackluster Buccaneers pass game for the rest of the season. I think this is a really good get right spot for them. We saw Chris Godwin getting more active last week. He got some explosive plays, and I feel like as this team gets a little bit healthier, they get more game time with the same set of receivers in the game. It's only going to help this team, and so I like going towards Egbuka. It's also nice that you can have Devon Bailey on the other side as a cheap greenback. So I like kind of attacking this game in that way as well.
Yeah, we've been just going over Emeka Egbuka and for to lump them in together, Rome Odunze. These two guys for 4 weeks looked like they were going to set the world on fire, and it's been a tough 4 weeks since then, really. It's just I don't know what's going on with those two. No consistency. At wide receiver, I'm going to stack my Jordan Love with either Christian Watson or Dontavian Wicks. It depends on what kind of lineup you're looking to build. If you're looking for a stars and scrubs, Dontavian Wicks is going to get you some salary savings, but Christian Watson has really just come off the IR and been a favorite for Jordan Love. For my other wide receiver, Austin, I'm going to look at T. Higgins, and that is a little bit of trying to just get different from folks who have paid attention to Chase Brown, and certainly from those who are all in on Jamar Chase. If I'm not building a Joe Burrow lineup, I'm probably not rushing to put T. Higgins in. I can see people rushing to put Jamar Chase in. Now, you have to monitor the concussion. Obviously, concussions are tricky. I don't even know that he's out of the protocol yet, so this might be a completely wasted pick, and I totally get not wanting to get him in there. But my assumption is he's going to be fine. Pay attention to the weather. It's something I looked into earlier this week. It seems like it's going to be fine there. But Austin, this is just a nice way to get in on this game environment. It gives me a bring back on my James Cook pick. It tells a story. It tells a story of Buffalo controlling this game with the run and Cincinnati keeping up with the pass. Overall, it's going to be the highest over-under on the slate. This is a game that I do want to be involved with. I just don't want to go with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow all in one lineup. And my thought process here is by moving away from Joe Burrow, most are also not going to have T. Higgins in their lineup.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to go about this, and a great thought process for how to attack this game. Because I agree with you, people are going to lean towards Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase really quickly, and so by playing T. Higgins and not playing either of the other two, you are shifting the needle in your way to gain leverage really quickly.
Yep. Also, we obviously have to talk about tight ends. You've already mentioned all of our favorite tight end for this week. So I'll quickly just add a few more notes on Tyler Warren. And actually, I don't even know that they're new notes, but Jacksonville gives up points to the tight end. We've talked about why we like other reasons of this game where they're a little bit tougher against running backs. But this is also the Jacksonville team that gave up that 3-touchdown performance to Brock Bowers. There is upside here for Tyler Warren and Austin, and GPP is by far my favorite tight end, but then you do have another option to throw out there, Alex.
So I mean, I mentioned Brock Bowers earlier, and I think he's in an interesting spot because I think he's going to go overlooked because he's going up against Denver. Two reasons people are going to think that. First off, people know Denver is the best defense in the league. People know that Pat Surtain, I mean, it was hyped up a lot that he was the number one non-quarterback vote in the league based on votes by other players last year. And he has an interesting relationship going up against, or Brock Bowers has an interesting relationship going up against the Broncos in recent years. So whenever we did the Denver Las Vegas showdown slate earlier this season, I talked about in that episode how Brock Bowers was an interesting player to consider at captain in that showdown slate, because last season against Denver, he had a game of 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown. But he also had a game of 4 catches and 38 yards. And the trick where was that he had a huge play in the first game where he had like a 58-yard touchdown. In the second game, he didn't have that big play. Well, this year, people are going to look and they're going to scroll on their app and they're going to see, oh, well, the Broncos, when he played the Broncos, he only had 1 catch for 31 yards. I'm not touching that. It's Brock Bowers though. Like I feel like he still has the potential like to hit that 8 catches, 100-yard game. And the Broncos have been bad against tight ends over the past 4 weeks. And so teams have been able to figure something out against them. Now, I don't really trust the Raiders all that much. So like that is a fair consideration here. But to me, like if I'm playing a Troy Franklin, a Cortland Sutton, and RJ Harvey on the other side of this game, because all those guys I feel like have good upside. I like the idea of bringing it back with Brock Bowers, a tight end that we know can break the slate, and is probably going to be lowly rostered this week.
Yeah, it's funny that the rise of Trey McBride has soured Brock Bowers in certain fantasy managers' eyes, and I do think that there's opportunity there as Trey McBride's prices skyrocket to look for the next big thing. And while we both agree this week it's Tyler Warren, overall Brock Bowers has shown us in that 3-touchdown game I alluded to, he is the guy who could break the slate. So
yeah, there you go.
All right, Austin, we can't finish these lineups up without defense. Who do you got this week?
Yeah, I'm going back to the defense that I thought would be fun and contrarian last week because they were playing Josh Allen. Now they play Lamar Jackson, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. The Steelers, they do weird things, and they will like have these weird games where they're able to like shut down Lamar Jackson or like force him into some weird fumbles or weird interceptions. And so there's part of me that's really inclined to like go into that of like, this is a divisional matchup. The division is on the line in this matchup too. Like it is wide open in the AFC North. And so the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, they're going to be ready to get after Lamar Jackson. And Jackson, he still does not seem fully healthy, and that is hampering his overall upside. So I think it's an interesting spot to again attack a quarterback to attack a defense that's going up against a quarterback that most people are not going to want to or be inclined to bet against.
There you go. On defense in GPP, you're looking for the big swings. You're looking for the people like Seattle who can put up 30 points when you're trying to take down these tournaments. And so, Austin, when I look at this slate, it came down to two options for me, and it's cheap or it's expensive. And you can start with the Denver Broncos, who are the highest on FanDuel, the third highest on DraftKings, so they're a little bit more appetizing on DraftKings. But the fact of the matter is the Las Vegas Raiders are just a great matchup. They give up a ton of sacks. They give up turnovers. It's just a win-win if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, Austin, I actually like your Atlanta Falcons. They have played much better defense this year than anybody expected. They are very cheap, 2,500 on DraftKings. Seattle is not giving up sacks, and that worries me a bit. They're only averaging, I think, 1.5 sacks allowed per game. So Atlanta, whose pass rush has improved, you're hoping for 2 or 3 sacks, but the fact of the matter is this: Sam Darnold over the last 4 games has just been turning the ball over like Sam Darnold. He's looked more like the Sam Darnold we're used to. And I'm going to bet on the turnovers, Austin, and on a team with high turnover that also gives you the chance at a touchdown. A pick six is an option there. And that's kind of what you're looking for to have the right defense in one of these GPP slates. So you can go with the very obvious option. And I think they're not going to be highly owned because of how expensive they are in the Denver Broncos. But I do think Atlanta has some sneaky upside this week.
Yeah, it's hard for me to root for the Atlanta Falcons when it comes to fantasy football because I can't have my happiness be reliant on that in 2 ways. But I did take a peek at them and I was like, Sam Darnold has been turning the ball over a little bit. So I could see going that route. And honestly, like while we're talking about quarterbacks who have been putting the ball in harm's way, like that same argument applies for Daniel Jones, even though I think he has interesting upside. You could play the Jacksonville Jaguars defense in tournaments, and I would feel super comfortable with that as well.
There you go. All right. That wraps up the show. We are going to talk about our lineups. Austin and I every week do the valedictorian shootout. It is me versus Austin. The heads up DraftKings scoring, no money, just bragging rights. And Austin continues to take all the bragging rights with his 5th consecutive win. At least I kept it close this week. 105 to 99. You are now 8-5 on the season. You're kind of running away with the contest. You called it when you set your lineup. I got a little cute. The Brissett McBride stack got everything done for you. But as mentioned earlier in the show, I now play the cheapest defense in cash and head-to-head contests. And the Carolina Panthers got it done last week with a defensive touchdown as the cheapest defense. So I'll go ahead and announce my lineup first. These are a lot of the players. In fact, every player on my roster has been referenced at some point in this show. So I'm going with Jordan Love at quarterback. I'm going with a 3 running back build. It's going to be James Cook, Quinshon Judkins, who we mentioned, and then RJ Harvey, who we kept talking about as a nice little way of getting a part of the Denver offense. At wide receiver, I'm going Christian Watson with my Jordan Love stack, T. Higgins from that Buffalo Cincinnati game, and then Jacoby Myers, who I mentioned is a staple in my cash lineups. Tyler Warren at tight end, and the dirt cheapest defense, the Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, we definitely have some overlap this week, so it'll be intriguing to see how this one plays out. At quarterback, I have Tyrod Taylor going up against the Miami Dolphins. I've got 2 running backs this week going with Devon Achane and Chase Brown. That leaves me with 4 receivers. I'm a little bit nervous about this, but I'm playing both New Orleans Saints receivers, both Chris Olave and Devon Vele. I don't know that I will stick with that all the way through to game time this week. I'm just going to throw that out there because it makes me a little bit
Tyler
queasy.
Shug as a streamer this week, so it kind of makes sense. There's some correlation there.
Yeah, it can work out. And then I actually put Troy Franklin in my cash lineup as well because I think the volume will continue to be there. I also have Jacoby Myers as my flex spot, and then I have Tyler Warren at tight end, and I end up with the Washington Commanders defense.
There you go. You love it. So, Austin demolishing that contest, but some new winners over on our FanDuel and DraftKings contest. And by new winners, I mean winner, because our very own Joel Worth took down both contests. Over on FanDuel, he is J-Dubs 1035. He won at 106.32. As Austin mentioned, didn't take a lot to win a lot of these contests this week. He actually had a pretty decent week over on DraftKings, though. He is Y2 Jolico over on DraftKings with 148.64. That is his 15th win in our DraftKings contest, but his first win of the season. over on FanDuel. So congratulations, Joel Worth, one of Club Fantasy's own. I promise you, we don't always take down our contest. It just worked out well this week. That wraps up DFS Academy for week 14. Austin, before we get out of here, let everybody know what you got going on when it comes to DFS at Club Fantasy.
Yeah, you can catch us here every Friday where we break down the main slate. You can also catch me and Josh Hudson every Thursday where we break down the Thursday night primetime showdown slate for DFS. And then most importantly, make sure you join the listener Discord. The link to join that is in the show description. At there, you can talk to us about all of your DFS lineups. We'll help you set your lineups and celebrate wins, debrief losses together, and overall get better at DFS.
Yeah, we put all of our articles on there from clubfantasyffl.com. Our rankings are available. We do all that stuff over on the Discord. Make sure you guys jump in there. Make sure you also hit the like and subscribe button. If you like what you heard, hit like. If you want to hear it again next week, hit subscribe. We drop this show every Friday morning. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, hit that follow button. We appreciate each and every one of you. Club Fantasy will be live again Saturday morning for Start Sit Different Day, where they just spend an entire hour answering your start sit questions. So jump in there. It's usually Josh Hudson, Joe Zolo, Joel Worth, who just took down our DFS contest, jumps on there with them sometimes. Even Austin's on there every now and then. So you'll see some familiar faces and some new faces and some really great people. Make sure you guys check it out. Good luck building those lineups. Good luck making the fantasy playoffs if that's what you're playing for in week 14. We'll see you next week.